Welcome to my very first gear review, where I'm going to decide if something is cool or crap. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Sony 16-50mm kit lens. So like I said earlier, this is the Sony 16-50mm kit lens. A few basics about this lens. It's obviously a pancake lens. It's very, very thin. It zooms from 16 to 50 millimeters, and it's optically stabilized. So it actually has a lens element in there that moves around and will help stabilize your image if it's being too shaky. Kit lenses are often one of those pieces of gear that are just looked over. You get the kit lenses for some of your first cameras, you use them a lot, but then once you start discovering, short depth of field, wider apertures, more specialized lenses, you kind of throw them to the side and forget about them. I've been incredibly guilty of this. Genuinely, for the longest time, I'd only used this kit lens as basically a body cap, just to make sure that the dust doesn't get in, or just to, if I ever needed it, use it, which I really didn't, until very recently. Now, there are downsides and there are benefits to these lenses. One of the benefits is they're relatively cheap. I bought this after I bought my Sony a6300, which is filming right now. I did not buy it with the kit lens, but I kind of regretted it a little bit later. I thought it might be useful. So I ended up buying this lens right here from somebody on Craigslist for $120, which isn't bad. Perfect condition. And it works really well. But I hadn't tried it out for the longest time. So I'm going to go out, take some photos, take some video, see if this kit lens is something that could be useful in either an amateur, enthusiast, or even a professional's bag. So let's grab a few photos, grab some video, and we'll check out how this performs in the real world. Okay, so we're at a park by my place, and I want to test out this 16-50 Sony lens versus a pretty popular lens as well. It's a high-end lens, a 24-70 Canon L lens. This is a pretty popular lens, especially for Sony people, because a lot of times I'll move from Canon or another brand to Sony. So I want to test out some handheld shots to see how the optical stabilization works versus the Canon, which does not have any optical stabilization. So I think I have a good idea how this will turn out, but we can check it out in a minute. And I'll do some handheld, and then I'll do some tripod shots just so we can get an idea of how sharp each one of these lenses would be. So let's take a look at the images first. So the method I used here was I obviously had the 24-70, and I also had the 16-50. Because the 24-70, the widest it'll go is 24. That's what I set my 16-50 at. So the widest image you'll see here is 24 millimeters, and the longest shot that I have here is 50 millimeters because that's the longest that the 16-50 has. And I took two shots. Took one where it was 4.5, which is what the 16-50 shoots at 24 millimeters. And then on the other one, I did f8 just so we can get an idea of what the sharpest it'll look like. So let's take a look at these right now. Okay, so here we've got the 16-50 and the 24-70, and they're both set to 50 millimeters. Now, this is actually kind of disheartening for me to see this because I was expecting the 24-70, it being a $2,000 lens, I was expecting it to absolutely blow the 16-50 out of the water. But that's not quite the case. So here we go. This is the 24-70 versus the 16-50. And you'll notice, I'll show this zoomed in to 100%. So you've got the 24-70 and the 16-50 at 50 millimeters. And dead center, the 24-70 beats it absolutely outright. Especially this being at f8, you would expect it to be sharper, and it being also a lens that's 2 times more expensive, it should be significantly sharper. But I want to show you the corners of these images. So here we've got both. It's the same image. It's both the 24-70 and the 16-50 at 100%. But here we are going to look at the bottom right corner. And you'll notice that the 16-50 is quite a bit sharper. Maybe not quite a bit sharper, but it's sharper than the 24-70. And, I really don't know why this is. I was very surprised, especially because I use the 24-70 on a daily basis. I mean, maybe this test is bad. Maybe the lens that I have, maybe it's been knocked around one too many times and I need to get it calibrated. But it's a very interesting conclusion for these images because I was expecting it to not even be close. And here we are. This is the 24-70 with the wide. Okay, so let's take a look at these images. So center of the image, cropped at 100%. They're actually pretty close, but the 24-70 does pull it out. It's definitely sharper. But if you look in the corners, even for both these images, the 24-70 is actually not as sharp. So optically wise, taking photos, I'll tell you, they are very, very close. So much so that I don't think that anybody would really notice if you're taking like a wide shot. And then let's take a look at the video. So on the video test, I wanted to try a few different things. One, I wanted to try some handheld shots just to see how much the optical stabilization helps. Second, I wanted to see how sharp each one of the lenses were. So set it up on a tripod, same setting, same everything, shot the same subject, just so I can get an idea for both me and you. And then third, this might not be useful for everybody, but I did want to get some tests for lens flares. And you'll see in a minute why this is kind of important, because it may or may not be good for you. All right, so here's the very first clip. And this is just me walking handheld to get an idea of what the optical stabilization looks like. And you'll notice, okay, so here's the first clip walking. I'll kind of loop this over and over so you can get an idea of what it looks like. The optical stabilization on the 16-50mm Sony lens works pretty well. And then when you compare it to the Canon 24-70, you'll notice it shakes a lot more. And not to say that the 16-50 doesn't shake and it's perfectly still, but you'll notice a lot of those really, really fine shakes, the ones that make it look like you're using a small DSLR, those ones have been completely eliminated. So I would say that it brings it from unusable handheld footage into the realm of it's acceptable. Especially if you've got like a small rig or something to hold your camera, it would definitely be usable walking. So here's the second clip. And this is just static, handheld, no walking, simple footage. And you'll notice that the Sony lens stabilized looks very, very good in terms of keeping a steady shot. One of the drawbacks of having optical stabilization versus Sony's in-body 5-axis stabilization is that all the optical stabilization can really do is up, down, left, right. So you'll notice that there's still a little bit of, turning clockwise and counterclockwise a little bit, but it's acceptable, especially when you compare it to the just the 24-70, which is a non-stabilized lens. You'll notice that there's not big shakes, but all those miniature, just kind of like, just the shaking of your hands really, really degrades just the overall quality of the image because it makes it look cheap. And then we've got the lens flare. And I'm going to loop this a few times just so you can see. So the first clip, again, is Sony. But you'll notice that little, green flare there. This is the reason I do not like the stabilized lenses in many cases, because you'll notice that green flare is just kind of wiggling all over the place. I'll loop it a few times so you can see it. You can pay attention. But yeah, that green flare is just very, very annoying. And I'm not really going to go into what I deem a nice flare and what somebody else deems as a nice flare, because I think that a lot of it is really up to personal choice. But then here you see the 24-70 flare, and you don't have any of the jiggly movement from any optical stabilized elements inside. So, you can decide if you like that or not. I personally prefer the flare of the Canon over the Sony, but like I said, that is just personal preference. So the final clip here is just a static shot. Both of the lenses are set at 50 millimeters at f8 to get maximum sharpness at that focal length. And you'll notice between these two, there's almost no difference, no discernible difference in quality and sharpness. And it's pretty incredible to see this from a $120 lens versus a $2,000 lens. So is the Sony lens cool or crap? I'm going to give it my cool stamp of approval, because for $120, you're not going to get much better than this. It's got optical stabilization, it's fairly wide, and it's got excellent sharpness, especially when you compare it to a high-end lens like the Canon 24-70. It's really good quality and a really good bargain. There are a few drawbacks. With that lens, you can only either really use it in a manual focus mode where it's just a static shot, or an autofocus mode, which may not work in most cases. And the reason I say that you need to use it on a static is because it's not like a normal lens where when you turn the ring from here to here, it's always going to be the same. With these new Sony lenses, it's determined by how quick you turn it. So you can't really pull focus like you might on the 24-70. So it's not going to be good in every situation unless you're using an autofocus, which sometimes fails. And then you also have the lens flare, which is really up to personal preference. But overall, I'm going to say that this lens is excellent. I'm going to be using it a lot more in my future videos. And I would say if you don't already have this lens, go out and buy it. There's no reason you shouldn't. So I'm going to leave this off with a few clips that I've filmed over the past couple months using the 16-50, just so you guys can get an idea of what this looks like in different situations. So thank you for watching, and if you can, leave a comment for more questions. I can answer them, and like and subscribe. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.